Welcome back guys to a brand new video. Previously you would have seen in the video that I've just released that I've purchased myself a brand new mill. The mill that I purchased is a Hafco HM32B from Machinery House in Australia, but I purchased it on Facebook and I got it for a bargain. One of the things that were missing on this mill was actually a machinist vise. So I reached out to Vevor Australia and I asked them would they be willing to send me a vise just to review, test and see what it's like to use in my mill and on my YouTube channel, and they said yes. So very exciting news. It turned up this afternoon in the mail and that is what is here in front of me right now. Let's get to unboxing it and see what it's like. One last thing before we unbox this, let's put it on the scales and see how much it weighs. No wonder the courier had trouble getting this from their van to my front door. This thing weighs a ton. It's 22.9 kilos or 50.5 pounds. Alright guys, so we've got it fully unboxed and as you see it is what you get inside the box. We've got the owner's manual, the handle, some hardware. Now these T-bolts here are a metric bolt. They are M12 by 50 millimeters long. They are 21.5 millimeters wide at that point and 28 millimeters 0.4 at that point there. So they slide into the base of your mill and that is how you mount that to the mill alongside with the 19 millimeter metric nuts and washers. Now the next thing I want to do for you guys is measure the vise specifications. I want to find out how wide the vise jaw opens to at its maximum limit, and I want to take some measurements of how wide the vise is, how long it is, and how tall it is. So if you're thinking about getting one, you'll know whether it will fit the mill that you either have at your workshop or your home garage. So let's get the measurement of the total height of the vise. It appears to be about 5.5 inches tall, or about 140 millimeters on the dot there in height. For the width on the more narrow side, we have approximately 170 millimeters or almost 6 3/4 inches wide there, just shy. For the total length of this unit, we have about 355 millimeters long or about 14 inches on the dot there. For the total width of the circular base, let's flip it over and I'll show you what the measurements measure there. Now that we've got this flipped over, I'll measure the width from there to there and also there, and then the bolt hole placement. We have just shy of 244 millimeters, but in inches, that measures almost 9.5 inches. For the width, we have 10.5 inches, which is about 265 millimeters. For these bolt positions there, we have around 9.5 inches or 240 millimeters to the center points of those two holes, and the total width of these holes here measure in at about 1/2 inch or just shy of 15 millimeters. Now let's flip this over and measure how far that jaw opens on its maximum limit. So that looks to be about 153 millimeters, I'd say, or in inches, it is bang on 6 inches of opening there at its maximum. I don't want to pull that lever down any further, so about 6 inches on the dot. Now, as an extra test, I wanted to see whether the vice jaw moves smoothly and consistently as I open it up. I didn't have a calibrated surface that I could mount the dial indicator to and then run it across here as I've seen in other videos, but I thought I could mount it on there and then slide this fully across to see whether there's any movement shown on the dial gauge. So there you have it, guys. That moved barely at all. I barely saw any movement in there, maybe the tiniest fraction, but almost nothing at all. Now for a final test, I've got the dial gauge set up on the top of the jaw, and I'm going to close the jaw fully and have it drag across here to see how true that slide is there on the vise. All right, that's about as far as I can go, and just the same as the other way that I measured it, it barely moved off zero. So that is a win for this cheap vise. I'm very happy with how it's performed. All right, guys, so we've got this fully measured up. I've shown you all the specifications as far as width, height, bolt hole positions, and whether the machine surfaces run true, which they do. I need to flip this over and then install the alignment dowels to the base of this and then carry it over to my mill and get it installed. All right, guys, we've got the vise mounted up there on the mill, and as you can see, it's not 90 degrees to the mill base. The increments here go from 0 to 90, but because of how I've mounted it to the base, there's no increments there that really tell me whether that's 90 degrees. So I'm going to use a dial gauge. I'm going to mount it up into the mill with a collet and a 10mm drill bit, and then I'm going to run it left to right on the mill and zero it out. So let's get that done. So as this stands, from this point to that point over there using the dial gauge, we have about 5 millimeters of twist or run out. So I'm going to tap the corner of this with a soft blow hammer, and then I'm going to correct the angle of it and then try again. All right, guys, so I've got the vise zeroed out. It's perfectly square to the mill, and I tell you what, that took a lot of effort to get that right, but it's definitely worth it. All you have to do is just go back and forth until that needle on that dial gauge no longer deviates from the set point. From the very first point to the rear, it needs to stay the same. So all I did was tap the corners back and forth until I minimized it down to no movement, and then now, as you've seen, we've got no movement at all. What I'm going to do next is remove this, put a cutting attachment in there, and then give this vise a go and see how it performs. I am super impressed with the Vevor 5-inch milling vise. It has made a massive difference to the performance of my mill and how well it actually cuts the material. Before, with the previous vise that I had a lot of chatter and I thought it was the cutting tips, but after replacing this and having one that's much more sturdy and rigid, it has made a definite improvement in the way that the surface finish has come out. I'd also like to thank Vevor for sending me this to review on the channel and to use it in future videos. Remember, link in the description. It is an affiliate link, so go and click that link, check out the vise, check out the pricing, and see whether it's something that you'd like to buy yourself. Anyways, that's a wrap for this video. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It goes a long way in helping the channel grow, and until next time, I'll see you in the next one.